The dodo, a 3-foot-tall flightless bird living on the island of Mauritius deep in the jungle. Cut off from Madagascar and Africa, it had no fear of humans or defensive adaptations because it had no predators. When Dutch sailors arrived in 1598, they found the plump flightless bird would walk right up to them or could be easily lured, where they then killed and ate them for meat until there were no more dodos. According to some, even the name of the dodo was an insult. It may have come from the Dutch word for sluggard or fat ass, or Portuguese slang for simpleton or crazy. And so they were thoroughly wiped out with ease. Or so we thought. Because due to recent studies of the few dodo specimens remaining in museums, DNA research, a mass death site, and the diaries of early sailors, a more complete picture has begun to emerge. Physically, the dodo was in fact no awkward bird, but rather highly adapted to its environment. Its jointed legs were powerful, perfect for climbing the mountains of its home island, and it could be quite fast. Its size meant that it had no predators, and therefore had lost most of its fight or flight response. Also, its brain was, relative to its body, about the same size of that of its cousins, the pigeon. However, like many birds, the parts that were highly developed were the parts crucial for finding food, specifically those governing sense of smell. And on the off chance it did need to defend itself, its large beak was actually a formidable weapon. The fossil record, too, is rewriting the idea that they were uniquely fragile and not adapted to survive. The island of Mauritius regularly had its ecosystem upset by cyclones and other large storm systems, meaning that the dodo would migrate in order to find better ecosystems if their original one was too damaged. They even seemed to have adapted their laying and hatching season to the annual cyclones. In other words, the dodo were not an outmoded species who couldn't adapt. Rather, they were hardened survivors who actually thrived in their environment. Okay, so if that was the case, were the humans just too much for them? Well, yes in a way, though these stories about the dodo being eaten to death are probably not accurate. Sailors did eat them, but they apparently didn't taste particularly good. Plus, it's unlikely that humans penetrated the thick jungles of the island to actually kill enough of them to make a real difference. No, it was all the other invasive animals who did that. Dogs and pigs were constants on ships and made their way ashore, and as Dutch colonists arrived in the mid-1600s, they also brought deer. And these introduced omnivores that would have been bad news for a bird species that was ground nesting and may have only laid a few eggs, possibly only one. Oh, but it was a delicious egg. In fact, it's been theorized that it wasn't humans preying on the dodo that really ended its reign, but rather all of these pigs, dogs, and deer attacking their nests. This would have caused far more rapid population collapse than mere hunting, especially when combined with the Dutch colonists rapidly deforesting Mauritius for ebony wood, giving the birds nowhere to shelter during the cyclone season. Okay, so Dutch sailors first reported the dodo in 1598, and the last sighting was in 1662. So in the course of 6 decades,